All right, finishing this up. So now we are into the part where we are solving, and this is on the back of the flip book. It actually didn't make it in any of the inside covers. So the main thing we need to pay attention to is, do we have one type of X? So we just, make our little checklist of order of operation backwards, or do we have more than one type of X? So number 9 is one of those problems where we have one type of X. So my goal is to just work backwards in the order of operations so that X can get its own room. So the first thing I'm going to do is move my 15. So the addition subtraction, I'm going to add 15 first. And so on this side I still have 3x squared, and on this side I have 15. And now I'm going to move my multiplication and division. So I'm going to move the 3, and I'm going to do that through division. And now I have x squared equals 5. And now I'm going to get rid of the exponent. And to get rid of an exponent, a squared, I will square root. So I'm going to square root this side, which cancels out this squared, and you get an x. And then I'm going to square root the 5. Now sometimes on this right side, when we take the square root of a number, we have a nice number. Like the square root of 64 would be 8. And -8, but here we don't, so I'm just going to write that my answer is the square root of 5. You could find the decimal if you want, but it's going to be the positive square root of 5, and it's going to be the negative square root of 5, and the negative needs to be on the outside, because if you write it like this, if you put it on the inside, remember, you can't take the square root of a negative number, and that's something that we talk about in Algebra 2. So you got to make sure that that negative is on the outside. So number 8 and 10 both have more than one type of X. So the first thing I always try is to factor. So I'm going to make my X, and are there factors of -15? That'll get me to -2, and you can run your factor program or you use your factor page, but you're going to see that -5x and 3x work. And again, this is easy factoring because it's x squared in the beginning. So my parentheses can be x minus 5 and then x plus 3. And now what makes them 0? This one's easy factoring, brings easy answers. So this one is x equals 5, and this one is x equals -3. And then, so that one's done. And now I'm going to go to 10. I'm going to try to factor this one. So factors of -10x squared, that get me to -1x. And this turns out to not be factorable. So you're sad, and now you sing your little song about the quadratic formula, and you just have to remember that it's got to be a is 2, your b is a -1 that's hanging out in front of this x right here, and that c is -5. So the song goes x equals, to get our answer, opposite b, so I'll use 1, plus or minus a big square root, and then b squared, so I'm going to square -1 in my head, so -1 squared is 1, minus 4, and then a, which is 2, and c, which is -5, and then it's all over 2 times a, so 2 times a, 2 times 2 is 4. So from there, I use my calculator, and I get the stuff that's inside the square root to one number. So what's happening first is actually the multiplication. So first, let me quickly just show you what your calculator's doing when you do this. I'm going to add the opposite right here on this -4. And again, the calculator's doing the multiplying first. So it's doing -4 times 2 times -5. And when you multiply those three things, you're going to get 40. And then I'm going to take the 40 and add the 1. So what your calculator has done when you've typed that all in is followed the order of operations to give you 41, and then it's all over 4. And then for an answer for us, what we do is we turn on our calculator and we enter our numerator in. So we type in 1 plus the square root of 41, and we hit enter. So unfortunately, you cannot see that, but when I do 1 plus the square root of 41, I get 7.4 with some more decimals, and then after I've hit enter, I divide that number by 4. So one decimal is, about 1.85 when I round it. That's one of my x's. And then I'm going to do this again, but this time I'm going to do 1 minus square root of 41. And I'm going to hit enter on my calculator. And then I'm going to take that number, it's about a negative 5.4 something, and divide that by 4. So my other answer that my calculator is going to give me is negative 1.35. And those are my two answers for x. So you notice in every single problem, I get two answers. I get two answers here, two answers here, and two answers here. And that's what that little squared means in the problem, that you should have two answers. Okay? All right, so now we are going to be writing the equation. So when you look on your flip book, we have two sections. It just depends on what you're given. So in the first one, we are given the vertex. So that means I will be putting everything into vertex form. Okay? So when I go through and I just identify, my vertex is the h and k, and the other point is my x and y, and I'm just going to put the numbers in there. So y is going to be 7, a will figure it out, x will become 2, minus h, so minus negative 1. I'll be squaring that, and then I'll be adding k and 4. So first, with all the subtraction and negative numbers in the middle of my parentheses, I'm going to quickly just add the opposite. And now my job is to clean up the right side. So first I'm going to start with my parentheses. That's 2 plus 1, which is 3, and then I'm going to square the 3, and I'm going to get 9. So this part here is now 9 with a, and then I'll add the 4. And now to get a by itself, I just subtract the 4 over. You know, a wants his own room. So I'm going to move over here. So that's going to give me 3 with 9a. And then to get a by itself, I'm going to divide by 9. And so a is, you could write it as 3/9. Maybe you realize that that's 1/3. And so the directions say write the equation. So the last thing we wrote in our flip book is, you know, replace everything but leave x and y as the letters x and y. So what I'm going to do is go back to this and replace everything here with the numbers that I know. But I'll leave x and y as the letters x and y. So here's our final answer. So the answer is going to be y equals, because again, I got to leave y as y. A, we figured out, I'm going to put the third. X, we leave as x. Minus negative 1. It'd be great if you made it plus 1. If you added the opposite, but that's okay. Squared. And then I'm going to add my k, so plus 4. And this is the final answer for number 11. So on 12, when I look at what I'm given the x-intercept. So I'm going to use the factored form. And I'm going to put all my numbers in. And again, the x-intercepts become the p and the q. And over here, this will be the x and the y, the 1 and the negative 3. So I'm going to substitute everything in. So in for y goes negative 3. I'll be figuring out a in just a moment. X is 1. And then minus p, so minus 5, and then 1 again, and minus q, so minus 2. And now I'm just going to start cleaning this up. So first I'm going to go to these parentheses, and 1 minus 5 is negative 4. And then I go to the other parentheses, and 1 minus 2 is negative 1. And these are multiplying in the parentheses, so, and then I still have the a, which is multiplying to this, and I still have the negative 3. And now when I just clean this side up, I get negative 3 equals 4a. And now to get a by itself, I'll just divide by 4. And so a is negative 3/4. And again, going back to my directions, it says, you know, put all the numbers that you know back into your original equation, back into here. But we'll leave the letters back into here. We'll leave the letters x and y as x and y. So my final answer for this one will be, I'll put it right here, y equals a, which we figured out, and then leave x as x, but minus 5, and then again leave x as x, and minus 2. And this is your answer for number 12. All right, number 12. Suppose you, or I'm sorry, 13. So suppose you are asked to find the maximum or minimum value of a quadratic function. So what point are you being asked to find? Well, that would be the vertex. And what quadratic would you want to have so you could find this point? Well, you would want then vertex form. And so now the height of a soccer ball is given by the function, and here it is. And t, that's like our x, that's our time, that's measured in seconds. And h, that's like our y, that's measured in feet. So we want the maximum height. So if they kick a kickball and it goes like this, what I'm looking for is this. So I will get it into vertex form, which means to go from standard form to vertex form, I will be completing the square. So the first thing I do is, they're not x's, they're t's. I'm going to group my t's together. But when I group them, remember, to complete the square, it's got to be t squared and not negative 16 t squared. So I'm going to factor out a negative 16, and then I'm going to have t squared, and I'm going to take a negative 16 out of here, which leaves me with negative 2t. There's plus my blank, and there's the 2 with minus the blank. And now I'm going to go through, complete the square. Take this, cut it in half, that's negative 1. Take negative 1 and square it, that's 1, and the 1 goes there. But remember, that's not really worth 16. This negative, or it's not really worth 1. This negative 16 is affecting everything. So even though I wrote 1 down, it's really worth negative 16. So now I'm going to clean up the outside to get this into vertex form. I'm going to quickly just, so this makes a little bit more sense, I'm going to add the opposite. Hopefully you can see that. And that makes this part on the outside 2 plus 16. So on the outside of the parentheses, I'll have plus 18. And then inside, I'll have x plus this number. Hold on. And then hopefully you don't forget about the negative 16. And then there's the squared. So that's really bad handwriting. But my vertex is 1. Remember, take the opposite of that, and 18. So what's the maximum height? Remember, y is the height, so it is 18 feet. And when does the soccer ball hit the ground? Well, that's when I want a height to be 0. So to do this one, I need to solve for t. So trying to figure out what numbers for t give me 0. So what I'm going to try to do is factor this and see if it works. So what I need to do, excuse me, because it's more than one type of x, is I'm going to make my x, and if I multiply, are there factors of negative 32 that get me to 32? And there are not. So don't be sad. We're going to now sing our song. So our A is negative 16, our B is 32, and our c is 2. So it's going to go x equals opposite b, so negative 32 plus or minus big square root. I'm going to use my calculator to square 32 because it's b squared, that's a big number, minus 4 times a, which is negative 16, times c, which is 2, and then it's all over 2 times a, so 2 times that, which would give me a negative 32 here. So I'm going to go to my calculator now, and I'm going to go to the square root, and I'm going to put in the plus or minus, and now I'm going to type in the 1024 minus 4 times negative 16 times 2. You can't see me doing this, but I get this number. And again, this doesn't make any sense to me as an answer, so I'm going to go back to my calculator, and I'm going to type in my numerator. I'm going to use the plus first, so negative 32 plus the square root, and this 1152. I hit enter, and then I divide it by negative 32, and one answer that I get so far is negative 0.06. And now I'm going to do this again. I'm going to type this in, but this time I'm going to use the subtraction sign. So negative 32 minus that square root number, and then I'll take that and divide it by negative 32, and the other number I get is 2.06. And the only answer I'm going to take is this one, is because this is talking about the time, and time is not negative, so this one won't be used. So when does the soccer ball hit the ground? After 2.06 seconds. All right, finishing this up, let's go to our last set. So this is, what we just took the test on, but we'll kind of quickly fly through this one.